Well, this week we're going to be looking at what it means for iron to sharpen iron. That's from Proverbs 27:17. And I want you to hear really what it means to say that we can grow from one another, we can grow from experiences that we've had. And so I'm here interviewing your site pastor, Pastor Shawn, and I'm hoping that he's going to share a couple things that maybe surprise you, but also some things that really encourage you as he's been encouraged in faith. So first of all, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Yeah, definitely.
A little bit different.
It's very different. It's a unique scenario to sit and actually film something like this. So it's good to be here, though.
Yeah. All right. So when you think about your faith journey, right? That's what we're talking about, faith journey. Just really simply, where you are right now. All right. You've done a lot of things in your life. You've been through a lot of things in life. You were educated for ministry, seminary educated for ministry, now pastoral ministry for a few years. So I want to start at the end, right? So when I think about the end, where you are right now, what's the number one thing that your faith benefits you like on a daily basis? We're going to get back into the other stuff in a minute, but now, today, all the stuff you've been through, what's the thing today that you say, that's the number one benefit of my faith? And I'm going to take off the table eternity with Jesus, like, yes, okay.
Right.
But just your tangible daily benefit.
I think for me, the ability to wake up and know that there's a purpose, like to know that there's no question in my life as to when I get up. I think there's a lot of people who struggle with what to do next, and each and every day. I mean, it's not that there's not that struggle internally of the day-to-day rigors of things. There's definitely questions like, I have no idea what I'm doing today, but the reality is waking up and knowing that there's a purpose. That each day, like to wake up with joy, to go to work, regardless of the scenario, knowing that God is using that moment, and not even knowing exactly what's coming, but having the opportunity to be able to do the ministry that God has called me to do in a way that I'm passionate about. And I know that that's not just passion of my own, but rather the Spirit has instilled that in me, has pushed me and said, you may not know, but I'll be with you. To know that you're confident in the fact that you're not alone in that too is a huge thing for me that I can say I probably haven't always had. There hasn't been throughout my whole life. I said, like you said, start at the end, but it's hard not to bring that in too, just to say that hasn't always been that way. Yeah.
All right, that's good. So purpose of knowing God's put this in front of me. Purpose of knowing I'm a pastor. I work for Jesus. I'm in the kingdom. I'm here at Cornerstone. So it gives you that kind of focus each day, and your faith does that. If having confidence that God called you into it. Yeah. All right, so let's back up a little bit. You were born.
I was.
And then you grew up in and then what? No. So you grew up in Minnesota.
Correct. Yeah, and lived there for pretty much about 35 years of my life. And growing up in Minnesota, there's a joke about being the frozen chosen, that you're constantly 6 months of the year we're inside. So to get outside and be around people, there's a lot of people who live in those colder climates who don't have the social interaction, or at least that's not their drive. My family, most of my family is very quiet, very reserved, so I was kind of the standout and a little different, and always wanted to be either in front of people or doing those things. It was just fun for me. Like that filled my bucket, if you will. But it was unique growing up there because in Minnesota there's also a lot of people who have faith. I mean, you throw a stone, you're going to hit a church. It was just common. So for me to grow up there, I didn't know any different. And then to visit other areas of the world and see, or even in the United States and just beyond, that comfort bubble that I had, to see that that's not the same for every community. That church isn't always the center of a person's life. That people didn't grow up in faith. My community, almost everybody did, or at least knew of it.
All right, so now let's do something fun here, right? Let's do something fun. So tell us a story from your childhood that's kind of humorous, kind of embarrassing. Surely something sticks out. Something you did, time you put a frog in the neighbor's pool.
My neighbors and I grew up in kind of a rural community. We had small towns close by that we were a part of, but it was not uncommon for my neighbors and I to be outside all day long, as many kids our age did.
Yep.
But the funny part is, like, we would just do dumb stuff, like ridiculous stuff that, riding our bikes around town around our neighborhood was nothing, but like going out and having BB gun fights was commonplace. something you never see today. Like people pause of thinking about even airsoft or those types of things, and literally we're out there seeing how hard could we push it before somebody screamed and said we're done.
Okay, so how often was that you?
Never.
Okay.
It was never me. I had a younger brother that usually took the target.
Yeah, okay.
But I will say that my neighbors rarely did. They're tough. They're tough brutes. So I grew up learning to be tough, not only from my other older brothers, but also from my neighbors. They were crazy. They would push the limits.
Cool. So grew up in a home of faith. Mm-hmm. Parents believers.
Yeah.
But your home situation, you have a couple of brothers that are significantly older.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
I have. My dad was married before my mom and dad got married. So I have 3 older half siblings.
3.
Yeah, my dad was always a person of faith, was really strong, someone I always looked up to, someone who, regardless of life situations, he just would always, he took the positive side of it, always. Even to the point where, literally his wife left a note on the table in the kitchen when he came home and said, "I'm leaving with the kids, I want a divorce." Things that could have wrecked him. And yet he still remained faithful, and ended up the divorce went through, and he kept bringing the kids to my brothers and sister to church, and met my mom as a school teacher in small town of Watertown, Minnesota. Just a unique situation, and they ended up after a short time of dating, ended up getting engaged and getting married, and along comes my brother and I. But that brought unique family situations where being the second family was challenging. Being the younger 2 siblings, the feelings of my older siblings feeling like dad and had a new family. So I lived that side of it. So I've seen those types of things. But even in through all of it, even though it was painful, my dad always remained faithful and said, regardless of what's happening, I know God has a plan in this, and I'm not giving up on him just because life isn't easy. There's going to be moments where it's challenging, and he always had that outlook, regardless of what he faced. Losing a business as we grew up. I was in 8th grade, and he lost a farm machinery business in the 80s, which was pretty common. We lost our home. All sorts of things, and he just always had that mindset that God's in control. He never worried what was going to come next. To my mom's chagrin most of the time, because she was like, "What are we going to do?" And he's like, "It's all right." But it always was.
So those are big things. So how did your dad, how did he speak of that? How did your family talk about that?
Oftentimes my dad was quiet. He didn't share a lot of it. I know
on some level you heard the story.
Definitely.
You heard
Usually
about the
it was
letter.
my mom who shared the story. Dad never brought it up because he never wanted us to feel like we were outsiders, or that we were a problem or a rift in the family. So he would always just be who he was, love us in that moment, and he never brought it up. But Mom would always be behind the scenes and say, "Hey, this is what's happening. I just want you to know so you're aware." Mom would always open up and share that, and Dad just would be there. He would never want us to think that anything we did was, or that our existence was a challenge to him and his family as a whole.
And so I know this is a difficult question. Do you remember as a kid, how did you feel when that conversation came around?
It was, kids inherently understand or know something's up. My older brothers, it was tough. It was tough growing up. Brothers pick on one another. Being the youngest, that. This was a little different. It was always a little more in depth, a little more "Hey, I'm joking," and it didn't feel like a joke all the time. So we kind of understood it, which is why I think my mom would step in and just say, "Hey, this is why. This is what happened." And so, he was the rock, always the rock, and my mom was always the one to kind of come in and sweep it up and say, "Hey, here's what's going on, so you understand." So they kind of worked really well, but Dad never acted as if either was right or wrong. He loved them both, both sides, and tried to always bring us together.
And did that, as a kid, did you make connections between that and your faith, or was that just something that was in existence in your family, so it was just a thing, but your life was normal,
right.
and faith
life was normal. We were in church every Sunday, and pretty much 3 or 4 out of the rest of the days of the week. Dad was an elder. which is ironic because his name was Elder. And my mom was the Sunday school superintendent for as long as I can remember. So church was just, it was what we lived. It wasn't just something that we did on a Sunday, but it was something that literally going to church, doing odd jobs, helping pick up the property was also a part of our faith lived out. You know, Dad would always say, this is what we do as people who believe in God. As a church coming together, this is what we do. It's more than just Sunday. You know.
So outside of your family growing up, who was influential for you? Speaking specifically of faith.
Yeah, my principal when I was in 7th and 8th grade, well, 6th through 8th, I guess, is when he kind of came in, was huge. And I just remember, his name was Gary Markshausen. I just remember every single time we'd come together in class, we had a challenging class, 7th and 8th grade. A lot of, I mean, as most do. But I remember we just had some kids who came in who really had difficult life situations. It was the first time, again, that I had actually seen a difficult life, you know, that it wasn't just mine or my friends, but this was like something in depth, way more challenging. And he would always take time, like in the midst of a classroom. I mean, I remember we'd have hours of conversations saying, hey, how are you doing? How can we help one another? How can we love and care for one another? And he was just always willing to say, yes, we'll get to the work stuff. That'll come. But he was teaching us how to live. He was not only saying to be a Christian means to do this. He would actually dive in and say, and this is it lived out. This is what it looks like when we actually care for one another and help at least understand where each other's coming from and the fact that God loves each of us all regardless of the situations or who we think we are or what others have said we are. So it was always someone who encouraged, and he did that, I mean, even into my adulthood. You know, it was someone I kept in touch with, and it was always there. It was always, you know, the irony is, as most people who are really living out their faith, he was always humbled when anyone would say, hey, I want you to know I appreciate you. And I remember him writing back and saying, I'm just proud of you. Like, it never was about him. He would always put it out and say, hey, look how God's working in your life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, just shift gears a little bit. So music is an important part of your life.
Yeah.
When did you start with music? When did you realize, hey, I'm kind of good at this?
I started playing, my parents were into music too, so I mean, as I said, Wednesday nights were choir nights. So my mom and dad would go to choir and we would hang out. But I remember being little and like literally being in choir, my parents singing, and I was crawling underneath chairs. And I'd sit by my dad in church and he always sang harmony. Like it was just what he did. And he grew up on a farm, never had music lessons, but his voice. He could sing and he could do harmony. My mom did too. I don't mean to take away from her, but hearing him sing harmony, and I remember from a young age learning from him how to sing. Even though as a teenage boy nobody wanted to say I was a singer.
Right.
But I would do that. And my brother and I both, we would just sit and sing songs from the radio and find the harmonies because Dad would do it. And we started playing piano when we were young. I didn't really like piano. Maybe it was just I didn't like my teacher. But
hope your piano teacher's not watching.
No, she's not. She's not. She was great. I never really. I wanted to be outside playing and not sitting at a piano. As I grew up, though, I played trumpet all through grade school and high school and college.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I played for 12 years, and now everybody knows that. But being a pastor now, I don't get to play trumpet, so that's my excuse. But when I was in college, I wanted to have an instrument I could actually play, and I did camp ministry and played at camp. So I would go out and I picked up a guitar. I remember a $150 guitar before I went to camp. I had no idea how to play. And I went there and learned how to play, and I loved it. I mean, I literally immediately fell in love because it was something I could take anywhere, play by myself. And it was also a time for me to just get away from the world, all the struggles, all the things, and just be in music. And that's when it really took off. And I've been playing guitar and singing ever since. And it's just been a good release to be able to, worship and praise songs is what I love. I mean, I love doing other stuff too, but it's in those moments that I feel I get to worship. And not just leading people in worship, but I actually get to, in all the busyness of everything, sit in worship, regardless if it's in front of the whole congregation or just sitting at home, even with my family playing music.
All right, so give me one quick trip, surely in all the times that you've led worship, and even from the time you were young, in camp ministry and so on. surely there's a trick that you've had where you've forgotten lyrics and you went, oh, this is a trick to remember them, or you've forgotten the tune and you have a trick to remember how to stay on tune.
When I used to play out and we used to tour, I'd have our set list, which you go to any concert, you see the set list, it's usually on the ground. And I would print the beginning lines to each of the verses, even my own songs, because when I'm up there in the midst, all of a sudden, as I'm into it, I see all the people, I'm like, my ADD gets all crazy, and I forget my own songs. So I would look down and I just have, as long as I had the first 3 words, I learned that was enough to spur it on and I could actually go from there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So now you're in a position, obviously, where you have your own family.
Yeah.
Your wife and 2 boys, obviously, good family. When you think of the way that you grew up and those things that have made you who you are, what did you want to make sure with your family? What did you say, this is the one thing I want to make sure is true about faith in my family, is true about Jesus in my home?
You know, the biggest thing for me is I just want them to know Jesus, first and foremost. And I know we say that can sound so trite or so pithy to say, oh, know Jesus. But no, truthfully, I want them to know Jesus, not the Jesus that the world tries to present, not the Jesus that we even might think about, but rather the Jesus of Scripture, the Jesus that loved, the Jesus that was accepting not of all that we do, but of us as individuals who he loves, who he desires to be with them, and trying to just get that to be understood by them, that not only does he love others, he loves them, that it's personal, that it's someone that deeply loves them to the point that they matter, they're here for a purpose and a reason. And although they may, again, not understand what's coming, that God has even a future plan for them as they care for others, as they share the love of Jesus, and as they go and encourage their friends and their family. You know, one of the things that both of my boys do very well, way better than I ever did, was just care for their friends and continue to invite them. Continue to say, hey, you know, I want this for you. I want Jesus to be part of your life too. And they're finding the challenge in that, because we all can have challenges and it can be difficult for a variety of reasons, but just to not give up, that it's worth it. It's worth trying and worth praying for them, but also just continuing to share the gospel, to share that Jesus loves them enough that he died for them too. Not just me, not just you, but all people.
Cool. And so thinking about what you said at the beginning, which was the end, what's the thing that you would want someone to know who feels like they don't have a direction, who feels maybe purposeless? Maybe that's in their home, or maybe that's in their work. What would you want them to know?
I think the thing that hits home for me too, because, you know, there was a time in my life where I felt like I didn't have a purpose either. And I share this often, that there was only one moment I remember in my life that God really spoke to me audibly. Like, I actually heard him. And that regardless of how you feel, that doesn't define who you are. You know, it's easy for us to look in the mirror and see someone that we don't like, or see a situation, or see a part of us, or see things that we'd like to change. But to remember that God has changed us, that God has made us different and made us new, and wants us to continually see us not as who we think we are, but as God himself sees us through Jesus. To be encouraged that whatever you're going through, whatever's happening now, is just a moment in life. It doesn't define the whole life. It doesn't make you something you have to always be, but there's a future hope for you. You know, so for me, it's just, don't get bogged down on who you are or what you think you are now.
That's good. All right, quick hitters. All right, I'll give you some quick questions, short answers. All right, you're a former soccer player.
Yes.
So who's your favorite soccer player?
Messi.
All right, Lionel Messi.
Yeah, he's endured a lot and still is. I mean, he's the GOAT in my eyes.
All right. So music, you're musical. Last song, if I were to go onto your phone, and the last song that played off your phone was what?
Oh gosh, probably Thanks for the Memories.
Frank Sinatra?
No, this is. I wish I could remember who sings it now. You have stumped me. I think it's. Oh gosh.
Old time song?
No, it's a new song, or it's a newer. It's like punk type stuff.
Oh, okay.
I can't.
Oh, like Like Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, Fall Out Boy. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I like it.
Minnesota.
Yes.
Favorite lake?
Favorite lake?
I mean, you got 10,000 of them, so.
Yeah. Waconia.
Okay, Waconia Lake.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite thing to eat?
Favorite thing to eat is sushi.
All right. Funniest thing Jesse ever said to you?
Yes. Because I was shocked.
That's a good answer. That's a really good answer. Favorite thing about being a pastor? Remember, I want the short version.
Yeah. The people. Yeah, I love being around the people.
Favorite thing about Indianapolis?
Oh man, that's a tough one. The community. There's a community aspect here that I didn't have when I was in Minnesota.
Cool. What states have you lived in?
I lived in Minnesota, lived
For
in
more than a month.
New York, lived in Wisconsin for a while, St. Louis, and then here. Yeah, that's it.
Favorite place? You have to say here. Okay. Other
Yeah.
than where you're currently living,
Yeah.
what was favorite place?
California, Huntington Beach.
You didn't mention California as a place you had lived.
I didn't live there.
Oh.
My cousins lived there. I visited as a kid. You said favorite place.
I know,
You didn't define it.
All right. Favorite Bible verse?
Romans 8. Honestly, the whole of Romans
whole
8.
chapter
but
is great.
It's the go-to. But 38 and 39. Yeah.
In all
Nothing.
things, I'm
Nothing
convinced
can
that nothing can separate us
Yep.
from the love of God and Jesus. Why is that your favorite?
Because I need that reminder every day. Yeah.
What's your confirmation verse?
John 15:5.
Same as mine.
Yes, we share that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's I'm the vine, you are the branches. That's what starts off. And if a man remains in me, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. It's how that ends in 5. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I asked you a bunch of questions and some quick hitter questions. What's one thing you wish I had asked you?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think probably what's my favorite part about Cornerstone? Yeah.
All right. So what is it?
Favorite part about Cornerstone is the staff. In all honesty, I should say the people, and that is great. But I will say that our staff is what makes it just enjoyable. And I've served on a lot of different churches. I've served on staffs that have gotten along, but this is different. And the culture in the staff also enables us and equips us to be able to share and to be joyful in what we do each and every day. So I appreciate that. The support that we have of people who are in ministry together, being here for the people is just an overjoying moment for me to be able to do that, to be able to be serving.
Well, good. Some things to think about, some things hopefully that maybe will instill some things in you, inspire some things in you, raise even maybe some more questions. And that's part of why we want to do this, the opportunity to know what God is doing in us. Sometimes when we see it in someone else, we can see it in ourselves as well. And certainly as you hear the example from Pastor Shawn and some of the things that he has learned and some of the ways that God has guided his path, it reminds you that God's at work in your life every day, no matter what step you're on, what stage you're in, what season of life you're in, that God's with you always. And those words you said at the beginning, that he has a purpose for you. In the love of Jesus, you are safe, you are saved, you are forgiven, you are loved. And so exploring that is an exciting thing. So really good. So God's peace be with you as you think through these things, as you continue to sharpen someone else, as iron sharpens iron. And may God bless you in all of that.